"Not yet hanged." That was the caption printed under Albert Einstein's photo in a 1933 Nazi propaganda magazine devoted to demonizing Jewish people. The phrase, "the Jewish question," wasn't just a title. It was a slogan the Nazi regime used to frame the very existence of Jewish people as a threat to be dealt with. Versions of it appeared in books, speeches, and newspapers across Germany. But this time, it was personal, a public and direct death wish, printed under the image of one of the greatest minds in human history. By the time that issue was published, Einstein had already seen what was coming. He had left Germany in December of 1932 with his wife Elsa for what was supposed to be a winter lecture tour in the United States. But when Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on January 30th, 1933, Einstein never returned. Within weeks, Hitler had already started to consolidate power. By April, the Nazi regime passed the law for the restoration of the professional civil service, expelling Jews and political dissidents from universities, government jobs, and schools. Teachers, professors, and scientists were removed not for misconduct or failure, but for being Jewish or for being loyal to the truth over propaganda. Einstein formally resigned from the Prussian Academy of Sciences in March, making headlines across Europe. His house in Germany was raided, his citizenship was revoked, and by October, he arrived permanently in the United States to join the newly formed Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. But in the months between his citizenship being revoked, arriving back in the United States, Einstein wandered stateless. He spent time in Belgium, living in relative seclusion before visiting England, where he spoke with fellow intellectuals who urged him to stay. But maybe Einstein understood something they didn't yet see, that this wasn't just Germany's crisis. It was a sickness that would spread far beyond its borders. And he knew he had to get to the one place he believed would still welcome his family, the United States of America. It's been said that he didn't leave Germany simply for safety. He left because science, freedom, and open thought were no longer welcome there. I've often wondered what Albert Einstein would think about the country he fled for safety. The country that once welcomed him for his brilliance, that now treats intelligence like a threat. He saw what happened when regimes fear educated minds and reward obedient ones. And I don't think he'd recognize us, because everything he escaped, we're letting happen here. With the rise of Trumpism and the MAGA movement, America has become locked in a desperate fight against the rise of anti-intellectualism. Because here in the United States, the war on intellect didn't begin with books being burned or professors fleeing. It started with a relentless campaign to erode trust in facts, to dismantle expertise, and to turn knowledge itself into something suspicious. With scientists mocked and cable news hosts calling doctors big pharma shills, and their audience cheering them on. With Maha Mamas booing experts and lawmakers mocking people who spend their lives studying the very things we need them to know. Little by little, we were taught to see knowledge as arrogance, to treat education as a red flag, and to believe that expertise is biased, and that ignorance is common sense and should be trusted more than any evidence-based recommendations. And I know I'm not alone to feel frustrated that we're now being taught to laugh at the idea that someone who studied medicine for a decade might know more than a guy who, and I quote, did his own research on Facebook, right? And let me be clear, I don't believe you have to go to college to be valuable or contribute. I've never told my daughters they had to be college educated to make a difference in the world. There are countless brilliant people who are building this country with their hands, their tools, their trade, their intelligence, and their entrepreneurial spirit, and that matters just as much. But when a society starts treating all expertise with suspicion, when doctors are called frauds, teachers are branded as dangerous, and scientists are dismissed as political, and credentials are spun as corruption, what's really being attacked is trust itself. And that's the point. Erode enough trust and nothing feels solid. No one feels credible, and the loudest voice in the room becomes the only one people hear. And the reason there's such a strong push for anti-intellectualism right now is simple. It's a necessary tool to fight authoritarian power. Fascist regimes don't function in societies filled with critical thinkers. They don't survive when people ask questions, examine facts, or challenge what they've been told. So they discredit the thinkers first. They attack scientists, professors, doctors, historians, and journalists, not because these people are wrong, but because they know too much, they've studied too much, and they carry evidence instead of conspiracy theories. And evidence is a threat to any movement that runs on lies. When a regime discredits every outside source of expertise, it leaves itself as the only source of truth. That's how they take hold. Not through better arguments, not through better logic, but through confusion, fear, and forced dependence. Because if you're trying to build a regime based on obedience, you can't afford to have a nation full of people who know how to think for themselves. You can't have science because science teaches people to challenge assumptions and test ideas. You can't have history because history reminds us what happens when people give up their rights, and it helps us recognize when those same patterns start to repeat. And along those same lines, you can't have educators because they arm the next generation with tools to resist, and all of it becomes dangerous in a system built on lies. So what do? Well, if you want to take over a country, you flood the system with disinformation. You twist reality. You accuse experts of being corrupt, and you make people afraid to trust anyone but you. And when that confusion sets in, when people no longer know who to believe, they become easier to control. They look to the loudest voice in the room, not the wisest. They mistake confidence for competence, and the entire country starts running on propaganda instead of truth. That's what anti-intellectualism is. And it's exactly what Einstein faced nearly 100 years ago, a regime that feared knowledge and punished those who carried it. And just like then, we've started driving out the educated masses. We no longer value what people know. We only value what they can pay. And now, in place of intellect, we demand gold. How many times has Trump proudly bragged that wealthy immigrants are lining up to buy American citizenship, not because they bring ideas or knowledge or need refuge, but because they can afford to pay? It's a sales pitch, and it makes one thing painfully clear. He doesn't want citizens, he wants clients. People who owe him, who will trade their loyalty for access and carry their Trump-branded gold cards like offerings to a king. This is not a merit-based system he has set up. It's a loyalty club for the rich. It's about surrounding himself with people who will never question him because they know what they could lose if they ever fall out of his favor. It's not about building a country, it's about building a throne. And the message to the rest of us is just as clear. If you're not rich, if you're not obedient, or if you're not useful to him, you don't belong here. But even loyalty has its limits. In a recent NBC News poll, Trump's grip on his MAGA base isn't as unshakable as it once was. The cracks are there. The number of Republicans who still identify primarily with the MAGA label is shrinking. And even among those who still do carry that label, the intensity is fading. At the start of the year, 78% of MAGA Republicans said they strongly approved of Trump. That number has now dropped to 70%. Among traditional Republicans, the drop is even steeper, from 38 to just 35%. A wide gulf is emerging, and even Trump's most loyal base is thinning at the edges. As NBC's Kristen Walker noted, this is really one to watch, because historically, the MAGA base has been unmovable. But now, even that may be changing. And that matters, not because it means he's losing power today, but because it proves something else. Not everyone is buying what he's selling anymore. People are exhausted, they're confused. Some are still afraid to say it out loud, but they're starting to see what's really happening. And the man who once cast himself as the only voice worth listening to is starting to sound less like a prophet and more like the con man that he is. And in the middle of all this turmoil and violence we're living through, I took a moment to be reminded that there are still more good people in the world than we sometimes see. I think about the absolutely horrific attack on the Jewish community at Bondi Beach in Australia. Among the chaos and grief unfolding, one story always stood out to me. The Muslim man named Ahmed al-Ahmed, who was unarmed, didn't run from the danger. He ran towards it. He tackled one of the shooters to the ground. He wrestled the gun away and saved untold numbers of lives. A Muslim man saved Jewish people. And if we cut through all the noise, all the fear, all the headlines, all the lies we're fed by those more invested in their own power and profit, what we see is simple. The violent extremists, the ones who pick up guns and take innocent lives, they're the immediate threat, but they do not act alone. They are fed, emboldened, and protected by another kind of extremists, the propagandists who demonize entire religions, the politicians who drive on division, and the leaders who need us to hate each other so that they can stay in power. They are the few, not the many, and they are the ones causing the real damage in this world, not our neighbors. I know so many of us are hurting right now, but we need to keep the hope for gentler days ahead and the strength to keep walking towards them together. And remember, no matter how dark the days get, always have hope for America. If you've made it this far, we're probably on the same page. I'm working hard to spread the message and reach as many people as possible. So if you can, please like this video and subscribe. For all of my daily posts, you can find them on Substack by searching my name, Heather Delaney Reese. I've also included a link for you below.